devs. This video, we're going to talk about animating, how to animate in the video game industry. How do we make stuff move around the scene? I'm also going to give you some exposure to the Unity animating system and some of its components. We'll also talk, and briefly mention some of the more advanced techniques, which will be in later videos, in terms of how to animate in 3D and how to use motion capture and IK. But for right now, we're just going to start off simple. So if you've used the platformer, Kenny's Art Platformer Pack, you're going to see inside of the platformer pack, there's the base pack, and then there's the player. So I want to look at the player artwork. There are a couple different ways that video games have traditionally animated within a video game. Typically what happens is that we create a sprite sheet. Now a sprite sheet looks like there's a couple things it can look like. This is one of the things that can look like. This is a gridded sprite sheet. It is even. Every single cell in it is the same measurement. So if you divided this by 7 by 3, you would get yourself an even set of artifacts that you could then move around in your game. And what we would do is, just like in movies, play one frame, then the next frame, then the next frame, and just kind of loop it around. Now, this could go at any speed, so it could go fast or it could go slow. We can take frames out, we can add more in, we can add weapons and that kind of thing. Lots of stuff we can do, but in video games, it's really important that we have all of the animations kind of in one area. The reason for that is a couple-fold, but partially the reason is because in video games and loading cartridge memory and that kind of stuff, traditionally, and this is, I think, true for phones, traditionally you want to put as many pieces of art inside of one, like PNG or JPEG or whatever. It should be a PNG, but you want to put it inside of a PNG. You want to put in as much artwork as possible. That way you quote unquote pack the texture. And that's part of what this is, what advanced techniques have been doing. And the reason for that is loading it off those cartridges can take a lot of time, processing power, and loading and unloading time. And there's just a physical speed that accessing it every single time would be costly. So what you do is you pull in a bunch of artwork. That's why when you're in the beginning of a level, it says loading level. Well, it's because it's pulling all of the information that it needs and it's storing it in temporary memory. So this is a traditional way of animating. It's called a sprite sheet. There is a tool in After Effects that allows you to export to sprite sheet. I have not used it. There's also a bunch of different tools that allow you to get sprite sheets going pretty quickly, including Piskel, and there's also one called Spriter, which is a 2D animation tool, which I am a big fan of. It also has some IK, some skeletons in it as well. And so, this is a traditional way. If you go look up Street Fighter, these are the way that you're going to see the textures, but you might see them slightly differently. So if the old Street Fighter games, you may also see them and I'm going to navigate to a file that I grabbed from Kenny's art assets somewhere else, but this is a packed texture for all of the spaceships in the top-down 2D shooter that Kenny artwork has. So each piece of this in here is a different thing. You can see here's some missiles with some different colors. We've got ships, and they're really lined up tight. But as you can see, there's a bunch of different pieces. And so what we do in this is we pack them together. We add them all up. And we make sure that they are as close together as possible. And that allows us to then cut and paste just the frames that we need. And this typically, if you see a sheet like this, it's going to be a more advanced kind of animation system. Not all animation systems support this. Unity does, but not all do. So like this is, an animated. So that's packing a texture. So sometimes you'll come across sprite sheets that look like this. And then let's go back into the base pack and go into the player. We also might see sprite sheets, which are just the images themselves. Now, this is kind of a newer, in the last 10 years technique in order to animate. And it works pretty well. People have been able to do that. If we go into the PNG in here, we have just all of the walking animations. It's important to name your stuff correctly. But we've got walk. And these are all separate files from P1 duck, P1 front, 1 hurt, jump, and stand. So these are all different animations with 1 frame each, and then there's a walk cycle with like 12 frames. I'm going to start. I have a new project. It has the Corgi engine in, but you can ignore that for now. We're going to create a new folder, and that folder is going to be called _ textures. So we have textures. I'm going to put this window side by side. Actually, you know what? I will not do that. I'm going to navigate to here. Now, if you want to, there's this button, Show in Explorer. It will pop up the folder. So it's a nice, easy way to kind of copy paste. Oh, here we go. So I have these textures. We're not gonna do everything, all the characters, but what we are going to do is we're going to assemble all of this artwork. So I'm gonna select I'm not gonna select the walk in here, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna select the walk from this sprite sheet, and then we're gonna use these other individual art animations. So I'm gonna select all of those, hit Shift click, and then just drag or copy and paste them in. And then they'll import in here, and here we go. So it automatically brings up some things for us and in our 2D stuff, because it recognizes it's a sprite. So sometimes when you bring artwork in, you're going to have to double check to make sure that the texture type is Sprite 2D. Sometimes this is set to default or something else, and you need it to be Sprite 2D, otherwise it ain't going to be working. So the other thing you can do is open up this arrow and see this. This is the actual art file, because P1 duck since it's a sprite, it will give you the opportunity to edit it and to pull out all the frames. So see how this P1 sprite sheet also has only 1 image, but it's the whole thing. So that's because this sprite sheet has multiple. Its sprite mode is multiple. So instead of single, which is what all of these ones are, you want to set this sprite mode to multiple. And the other thing you're going to have to do is hit apply. And then see this little button here, it says Sprite Editor. Got to open that up. Here we go. So this is the Unity Sprite Editor. In here, we are able to cut up artwork. And if we were to bring in the spaceship bit, we can cut up artwork here too. We can do it custom. We can cut this up. Right now, there's only 1 slice, as it were. But what we're going to do is we're just going to automatically, we could also do grid by cell size, right? So, or count. So we could do columns. We could do 7 columns and 3 rows, and we could hit slice. And there you go. You can see it's almost all lined up, except for this character over here. It looks like Kenny didn't do a very thorough job with this last frame here. So, maybe we have to fix that. And also there's an error right here too. Look, this frame as well. So it is lined up, but it's not perfectly lined up. So I guess we're going to have to, instead of doing it by count, we're going to have to do automatic. Now, this is really amazing. I could edit this myself. So I could go in here and I could edit just move stuff around. And I could edit all of this manually. Like that. And I could get a frame of animation. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to hit automatic and slice everything automatic. And look at that. Nice little cards. Everything is clean. It does its best job. As long as you don't have any overlapping edges, you should be fine. It should be able to do what it needs to do. If you do have overlapping corners and stuff, you can still do this. You just got to do it manually. But, if you really have to pack a texture in, then that's what you got to do. All right. So let's just hit apply. And then we can close this window. I'm going to try to close the Sprite Editor. And look at that. P1, look at all of these separate now items. So you can see the P1 sprite sheet with it all split up. By the way, there's some other information down here. Max size, you don't have to touch any of it right now, but just so you know that if you're working with files that are over 2000 pixels, which you should not, you can change that here. There's another thing that's really, really, really important about textures and artwork and that kind of thing, is that generally you want to have your artwork at a square grid. I know this one is not, but this is just not a great full texture for a sprite sheet. But what you want to try to do is have things as square as possible. So 64 by 64, 512 by 512, 256 by 256. Those numbers, they're binary numbers, and they're really important to that you use them and that you don't round off numbers to 50 or 100. The reason is because not only do computers not only can computers perform their math functions faster, which is really, a side note with computers being so powerful nowadays, but it can be really important in keeping in keeping your grid size. Everyone uses this measurement, so just by standard, everything kind of fits together if you're using a binary scale. If you have trouble learning it, like it goes 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 768, 1024, 2048. The way you can do this is you can play poker with chips and play with your friends, and instead of betting normal amounts, each chip is a binary number in that way you can kind of like math at the same time. That's how I practiced it. Anyway, so these are just artwork files. In Unity, they're just artwork. They're not the animation yet. So how do we get something animating? Well, it's actually pretty easy. Now that we've sliced up this sprite sheet, and we could do this for the other ones, but they're just one animation, so they're not as fun. So I'm going to select all, not the last one. I'm going to select for 15. I'll select them all. And I'm going to drag them all out into the scene. And look at that. I have this little character. That's very nice. It's 2D, you can tell. And once I drag it out, it says, hey, do you want to make a new animation? And I do. And I don't want to make it in the assets folder. I want to make it in the animation folder. And this one is going to be called P1 Walk. Now, if we hit 2D here, we get the 2D button, which is very helpful. And now we have this piece of artwork. Okay, it just stands there. If we let's scale it up just so we can see it, and then let's press play, and we'll see that it animates in here. There we go. So now that we have this animating, let's take a look at the item itself. We've got the transform, that's normal, where its position and scale is. And then we've got this thing called Sprite Renderer. And if you notice, Sprite Renderer is going through each frame individually. There's buttons to flip. So if you are going left and right, you can do that. You can do upside down, draw mode. Simple is best. If you have sliced, yeah. So a sliced draw mode is like the UI tile, so we don't really want that. So mask interaction, no, we don't need that. Sprite sort, material, sprites default. And then we've got the animator. So the animator has a controller, and that's what we're going to be really focused on right now. It automatically generated this. And in fact, in the animations folder, we've got P1 walk and then P1 sprite sheet 0. So we're going to rename this. We're going to call this P1 anim controller. Oops, looks like I left out an L. All right, so this is P1 P1 anim controller. So if we select our sprite sheet, see now that's anim controller. Let's open this up. So a controller, so we have animations. They're individual items. They're like this right here. They're just a thing. And then we have a controller, and its job is to take all the animations and to do logic to it. And this is where like code can kind of jump over. So we're just going to double click it. And let's get the animator into a smaller window maybe. There we go. So this is the Unity animator. You might also hear it called Mechanim. It is a way for us to interface code and logic and into animations. So if I wanted to, so what's happening right here is I've selected my P1 sprite sheet controller. This is the entry point. This is like where everything starts, and then this is the first animation. As you can see, it's playing over and over again. And if I select it, oh, you know what? I need the inspector. Let's do this animator side by side. If I select it, I can see that the motion is P1 walk. So I could replace this with a different animation. I don't really have too much. Let's see. Oh, I do have a couple things from the Corgi engine. I'm not going to use those. So this plays the animation. We can click this. We can see that it's in there. This is also the logic. The default transition just goes automatically. So let's press stop here. And so I've made this P1 Hurt controller. But how do I get it? How do I get the artwork into it? So if we could, open up the animation window, which is window animation. So this is probably what you've seen before. If you have seen a lot of animation software, this is the animation window. Right now we are on what is called the dope sheet. There is also the curve editor. I'm not going to use the curve editor too much just because I don't use it that much, but just know that if you're more familiar with that, feel free to use it. But the dope sheet is where we have what it is we want to do. And we can control any kind of property, color, position, scale, that kind of thing. And we're going to play around with one or two more properties than just the one. So we're going to go in the animation window. We're going to select this character. And we can see here that we have P1 sprite sheet. So this is the automatic thing that it did. And you can see each keyframe is individual for each image. But if we open it up, we have it changing the image. So really what it's just doing is it's just switching the image at a certain time. And these are called keyframes. Keyframes are, and I'll show you with some artwork we're going to look at in a second. So think about keyframes as like the most important, in animation, it's the most important position that you can be at. And then all the other things in between are called the tween frames. Now in old time animation, what happened is you'd pay the really expensive people to do these in-between frames. So you'd have this character here standing idle, and then you would have the character at full position in attack mode. So it would be up to the artists, the animations, the like lower level animators' jobs to make all of the in-between animations to really make that look good. But it was the lead animator's job to kind of position everything and keyframe the key frames. So using this, we can add another one. So we can go here, P1 walk, create new clip. So in animations, in P1 walk, we can go down here, we can create new clip, and we can call this one P1 Hurt. Now P1 Hurt has no properties. We're going to add a property, sprite renderer. And, look at this. We have color. We have a lot of different things we can do. We're just going to do the sprite, because that's what the other animation did, sprite. And we have one frame, and we have 2 frames at the end of 1 second. So we're just we can move. So the way we want to manipulate this is grab this white line. This is where your key marker is going to be. So if you position it there, there's a button here that says add keyframe, add event, filter by section. You can also right click and add key directly, but if you want to use it there, oops, there we go, you stick the key in there. So we have this key, we have the sprite, but we don't want this sprite. What we want to do is we want to go in and go to hurt, and we can just drag it in there, and I can delete this frame, and there we go. We have this hurt frame. All right. So look at this. See how P1 hurt has appeared on the logic? Let's do one other thing. So now that that is there, if we press play, it's not going to do anything. So what we need to now do is connect the logic. We're going to right click on the P1 walk, make transition to P1 hurt. And then let's press play and see what happens. I'm going to press pause just because the animation is going to play really quick, and I want to make sure that you see the blue line and then watch everything going on. All right, so it's just beginning this animation, and then it's playing this, and now it's looping here. The reason why it's looping is it's no way to get back. So we can right click here, make transition back to P1 walk. Now we can do this in a set of loops. Now, if you click on these transitions, you're going to see a lot of different information in here that's actually kind of really cool. One is the blending. The other is conditions. So if you hit plus, we're not going to have any conditions right now, unfortunately. And this is kind of one of the more advanced features. But let's say that you wanted to control the animations via programming. Well, in parameters, let's say you wanted the animation to change the idle animation to be like really hurt because your character's really beat up. You could add health. You could add an entry here for parameters, and you could add health. You could update the health item, health number into the controller and tell the controller, hey, my player health is 30. And then if it's 30, do this animation. And if it's 50 or above, do this other animation. So you could quickly customize and make trees out of, kind of decision trees out of what kind of animations you play and use. It can be really advanced. You can get really into it. That can be really cool too. I'm not going to do too much of that. But what we are also going to do is we're in P1 hurt. Let's add another property. Let's open up the transform and hit rotation. So I just want to point out another way of setting all this up. So the rotation is XYZ up here. We're going to go into the scene, and then let's hit record. So once we hit record, we're in the P1 hurt animation set, and this is rotation. So I'm just going to rotate some stuff. And see how the red is popped up. So let's see, rotating in the Y is like 56. There we go. And the keyframe is automatically there. And then maybe 130. So automatically it changes things. I could also move it around, and look at that. It automatically sets the position as well. So I'm going to do even a little bit more. And look, I can scale it as well. So this is a really dumb animation now, but I'm going to hit unrecord or stop. And then let's see how it goes. I'm going to put the game window up here. We're going to press play. And we're going to watch this weird P1 hurt animation. You know what I did? I added a condition, and now that there's a condition here, it's not going. So I borked myself. I'm going to hit minus and hit minus again. If I press play. I think that's the best animation ever. Star wipes are, my new enemy. So yeah, this is just straightforward animation and an animation controller. You can do a lot of things. It's very powerful. Keyframes is important. The record function is important. Being able to move stuff around. So there are two other ways you can get animations into the game, and I'm not going to go over exactly everything. But if you are working with if you were working with an art file, like a character art, oftentimes they will have what's called IK, inverse kinematic skeletons. And you can do this in Unity. It's a little bit of an advanced topic. You have to set it up. It takes a little bit. That being said, once you do it, you can grab the hand and drag the hand around and move it around. And then the rest of the body will follow in the logic that you need. So maybe it'll pull the hand, but if you pull the hand too much, it's not going to pull the hips along with it. It can allow you to automatically adjust to terrain. So it's much easier for your feet and that kind of thing if you're trying to figure that out. But the way it looks is it looks like this. It looks broken out into pieces. You might come across artwork like this. If you download the 2D art package, that's also like that. The 2D art package from Unity, the example, they have artwork that's set up in that way. There's AE to Unity, After Effects to Unity animation. This is a great tool for bringing in After Effects stuff. I know a lot of students in our department often use this as an external tool. This also has IK and all that kind of stuff. All of your comments, all of your notes and stuff, a lot of this stuff translates straight into Unity. So it is a great tool, especially if you have familiarity. It will really get you going. But there's also Piskel. PiskelApp.com. This is a really low res animation system, but it's really great for just getting stuff started and quickly getting things out the door. So you could use whatever you want, but that's kind of how to grab artwork and use that and bring that in. And that's the animation system in a nutshell. Other than that, there is 3D animation, which we are not going to get into, blend shapes, that kind of stuff. But this should get you going. It'll allow you to do anything. The challenge that most people do first, if you're just getting into animation, is the bouncing ball. So what is the bouncing ball? It's taking a ball and dropping it, or making it look like it drops from a great height. Or whatever height you want, I guess. And the idea is that, the ball will come down, fall, and then when it hits the ground, it will squash, and then it will unsquash as it bounces up, and then bounces again and again and again. So it's a really it's a really good, do it on the side view, so you only do it in one direction. But the bouncing ball is one of the first animations that you do. So try that if you can. Set up a character controller, get some stuff going. If you have any questions, post them down below, and I will see you in class.